Do you ever want to dive deeper into the Bible, but you just don't know where to begin or struggle to even feel like you have the time? When you read the Bible, do you get frustrated because you know there is so much more in there? You just have no clue how to get it out. Or maybe you just want to know the Bible better and you're looking for any resource to help. Well, then this is the podcast for you. Welcome to the Context and Color of the Bible podcast. We are two sisters. I'm Erica.
And I'm Veronica.
We love to study the Bible and help others understand it better. When it comes to our own study of Scripture, we have found that in bringing back the context of Scripture, it adds so much to our understanding. It actually adds color to the black and white pages of the text. So, Veronica.
Yeah, do you really want to tell them what happened?
This is our second run through for podcast episode 141.
Because I forgot to
Because
put my mic on so it would record.
it was just me speaking into the mic and nobody could hear.
Could have been a fun podcast.
Right. It would have been a fun podcast. Me
Erica
just
talking
listening.
to herself.
Uh-huh. Silence.
Yes. But you were complaining.
Because you wrote it in like this horrible yellow that I
like
could
a
barely
mustard
read.
yellow.
A mustard yellow.
Yeah, and I said, because look at this table. It's only colored pencils at your school table.
I know. Because
I
my
don't
kids.
understand
There's
how
a
you do
pencil.
school
Because-
without pencils or pens.
We're special that way. Because we do school upstairs and downstairs, and so I think they carry the pencils upstairs.
Why do you carry your books
with them.
upstairs, though?
Because it's cold down
Yeah,
here.
that's the truth.
It is cold.
My toes are numb.
You know, I give you a blanket
I know.
if
not
you
today.
want one.
I know.
But yes, it's chilly down here. So we do some school down here, and we do the rest upstairs.
Yeah. So what school do you do down here?
Well, the early reading
Which that makes no sense.
and grammar.
Okay, I want them cold so they're awake for the grammar.
Probably, although grammar's fun
Yeah.
with the way IEW
IEW.
does it. But yes. And so also I was going to share this with you. My eldest has decided we're not cultured enough.
Oh no.
So
Oh,
every
no.
time a sibling belches, which we have boys.
That's a Nelson trait.
It happens, and it does come through the Nelson family line. They all have to say, "Pardon me."
No way.
Yes. So my 5-year-old belched the other night at dinner, and Rena goes, "And what do you say?" He goes, "Pardon me."
Aw,
It was
I'm
so
gonna
cute.
drink some pop or something
Yes.
and then do it in front of her.
Yes.
And
So
then
that's
not
our,
say anything.
right. So that's our fun little family.
That's
We try to say,
hilarious.
"Pardon me," because my 14-year-old is definitely into the Mom. They belched. I'm like, they're boys. They
know.
belch. Can't you teach them?
Yeah, she and Kylie should talk because Kylie still has complaints about
Boys.
her little brothers. Who are
Boys.
16 and 13.
Right.
Yes.
They make a lot of body noises.
Yes.
They're just different.
Yes. And the world is their bathroom.
Right.
Which really bothers Kylie.
Yes.
But we live on 5 acres in the woods.
They can be.
Yep.
We live. Okay. Unfortunately, my 5-year-old has not learned that we have neighbors. So all the kids were playing soccer the other night in our front yard, and they're off to the side,
no.
hidden behind a tree. Was Asher.
Trees aren't that
But
large.
the trees aren't that big, so you could see. Yes, and a
Yeah.
car drove by, and we were like, Asher.
Maybe that's why Rita wants you to be
Asher.
cultured.
Right.
Keep talking here. I'm starting to see more insight into Rita going, we need to be
Yes.
cultured.
Yes, if you drive by my house, I apologize. If you see two little white cheeks flapping in the wind.
At least he's 5.
And then he at least says, "Pardon me."
Yes.
So,
That's cute.
yes. Anyways, back to Genesis and other kids.
But it actually fits because we're talking about siblings today.
Oh, that's true. We are,
We're-
yes.
We're carrying on. We left off last week with we need to start looking at these children, Jacob's children, because one of them,
Right.
it gets the blessing of carrying the seed.
Right. Yes.
And so we have potentially right now only 11 because Benjamin's not born yet.
right.
11 options where this is the first time in the storyline. We did have Jacob and Esau.
But he got rid of pretty
He
quickly.
got rid of really quick. And so
Yeah.
that's what the author's going to do again. We're going to start real quick just telling some stories
Right.
about these kids. We don't even have like ages really.
Right.
And a lot of like what families like behind the scenes. But we're just going to tell you real quick why this one's going to get cut out and not be
The
a
one to
potential for
carry.
the seed. So if you want to have some fun, make a list of the 11 boys' names.
Yeah, pause the podcast right
Yes.
here. Make a list.
And then we're going to start crossing off some names.
Right.
So the first, we actually get to cross off 2 in chapter 34.
That's really nice of the author to do that. 2 for the price of 1, listener.
Well, these 2 boys work together.
Right.
But what we start with is Jacob and his family are settling down.
Away from Esau.
Yes, far away. And Jacob has one daughter that's recorded in scripture. And her name's Dinah. And she is a stranger, is an alien in this area. And she goes off to the town and gets seen and taken.
That's a good way to put it. Seen and taken.
You know?
Right.
And we don't know, was she by herself? How did this all go down?
Right.
Was she in a dangerous part and didn't realize it? Was she
the naive country girl that got taken advantage of?
right?
Was she foolish? Was
But-
she just an honest, innocent
Right.
victim?
And we don't even know how old she is, but we can kind of figure she was of marrying age. She was not a young little girl, because her brothers also have to be old enough to dole out the punishment
Right.
they're going to do. They clearly were not teenagers. They had to have some wits about them and just some physical.
Right. These
Strength.
are probably
So she's
young 20s.
Yeah,
Like upper
sure, at least.
19, 20 or 21.
And so Dinah goes out, and it's just fascinating. If we could read the Hebrew, there's a lot of reversals here and similar wording, because what we want to see is the word in verse 4 for get, as in get me the girl, is the same Hebrew word in verse 2 for he took her. And again, like we've talked about, Hebrew is a word poor language. So one Hebrew word has multiple meanings. So this word has the idea of accept, captured, caught, married, seized, selected, taken, or used. And so all of that behind this is not exactly like it was consensual.
Right.
This
Yeah.
was not something Dinah was out looking to happen.
Right.
It was forcefully put upon her.
Mm.
And then what we see is Dinah's brothers, her full biological brothers,
Because they're all children of Leah.
Leah. and Jacob.
Right.
Leah, were you in Star Wars?
I know. I was trying to think, wait, which one and what?
And so her 2 full brothers come to her rescue. They're going to defend their sister. And the only way they can do that is through deceit and cunning, apparently.
Right. Which part of me goes, I mean, obviously what happened to her was completely wrong. Did you have to wipe everybody out? But I don't know.
But on the other hand, Dad doesn't seem to be doing anything.
No, Jacob comes across as a fat loser here.
Right. Jacob doesn't seem to really be caring what's happening to his daughters. Because if you
Right.
start verse 13, it talks about sister, and it ends at verse 17 with sister. So this is clearly her brothers
Right.
looking out for her. And so what's fascinating, though, is JPS, the Jewish Publication Society, says for verse 14, the body part used by Shechem
Yep.
in his violent passion
Yep.
will itself become the source of his own punishment.
Right. Ouch.
The punishment fits the crime.
Yeah.
You know, so, and you kind of say, he kind of asked for it,
Yeah. Yes.
you know, but so there's this whole conversation with Shechem and Hamor as they're coming to Jacob, and there's a lot of deceit going on. This is not a completely innocent, upfront
No, that's true.
exchange.
That's very true.
They
Yeah.
did leave out. Look at verses 21 through 24 on your own later. Look at what information gets left out and what gets included. What kind of conversations could you be having or should you be saying
Right.
as you're having this? But in verses 25 through 29, it says Simeon and Levi took their swords. Again, it's that same Hebrew verb that we had in verses 2 and 4.
The seized, the taken.
Making up for the first taking of something.
You took my sister. I will take my sword and take your life.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Pretty much. So again,
Right.
you just see in the Hebrew all these reversals and connections. Again, like we've been
Right.
having these dots connected.
Right.
And so then in verse 26, they took Dinah.
Oh.
And so
right.
it's the same word from verse 1 when Dinah went out. So you have a reversal. Basically, you could say Simeon and Levi, the account has been settled for them. Dinah went out and was taken. And so they took Dinah and went out.
Interesting. So the complete opposite again.
Yes.
Or you're flipping the verbs
Yes.
again.
It's a done deal now.
Right.
Now, with this then, Jacob finally does get involved in verse 30 and 31.
Yeah, he's ticked at his sons.
But look at, will you read those two verses there?
Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me a stench to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." Which I don't know. I don't know what to, I don't know. This story is one that
Right.
you just don't know what to do with all of it.
Well, ultimately, you cross Simeon and Levi's name off our list of potential seed carriers.
Ultimately, maybe that is the only reason it's in here.
Right. I think it is to go, here's why. But what's fascinating is when you and I were talking about this, because I said we
Right.
crossed them off the line, but you brought up what happens to these two tribes.
Well, later on, Jacob, and part of this I've gotten from my husband as he's been studying the book of Joshua. Part of it is when Jacob dies and he blesses his sons before he dies, he blesses Simeon and Levi based on this story
Event.
and he's still not happy with them. And so
Nope.
he tells them their share is going to get split. Like they're going to get lost within the tribes essentially because of this story. And Simeon does. If you look at their allotment, they are given land allotted within the tribe of Judah and they're eventually gone. They disappear within the Judah tribe. But Levi takes their curse and actually redeems it because Phineas, who is in the tribe of Levi, does an amazing thing. I think it's in Numbers.
It is Numbers. I'm trying to think. 26.
Yeah, you might be
22.
right. Yeah, good job. And he is zealous for the Lord and he strikes for the Lord. And so the Lord blesses the tribe of Levi. And so, yes, just like Jacob blessed them / cursed them, they are scattered throughout Israel, but it's redeemed because now they're scattered as the priests who are now to teach the people about God. So they don't get their land allotment. They become the Lord's portion and they are scattered throughout the tribe to show everybody, here's how we're supposed to obey this God. Here's what he's like. Here's what he wants. And so they redeem or undo that curse that gets put on them because of this. But this story actually, I guess, and now that I say that answers my questions too. That story shows partially what happens to the two men,
Right.
why they end up the way they do within the tribes.
Right. So again, it's laying foundations for
Yeah.
future blessings at the deathbed of Jacob.
Right.
But also then
Where the tribes
where these
go.
tribes go.
But right now in the book of Genesis, Veronica, we're focused on the seed.
Right.
And now these two
Right. These two just lost it.
lost the chance for
They
the
got
seed.
taken out of the running.
Right.
So with that, then we can knock out 2. Now we're going to get to, let's just jump ahead in chapter 35 because then we'll come back.
Okay.
Chapter 35, we're going to start at verse 16. Rachel's going to die.
Right.
Rachel dies in childbirth. And what's fascinating, though, is she dies. So the oldest, the legitimate oldest child, who is
Reuben
steps up, and what does he do?
sleeps with his father's concubine.
So Bilhah,
Right.
she was Rachel's handservant, maidservant, concubine, whatever word
Right.
you want to put. Bilhah went with Rachel. So we're not completely sure, but there could be some thoughts of Reuben. His mom's Leah. She's never been the favorite. And he is clearly old enough
To know that.
to know that.
Right.
And so he clearly is going to be partial to his mother. He loves her. So by making Bilhah be now unclean, used by him, that makes sure Bilhah never becomes the favorite wife.
Because, yeah, you can see that. When you said that earlier, that makes sense that, well, you were Rachel's servant. You're somewhat the closest thing I have to her.
Mm-hmm. So let's make sure you don't come in and usurp my mother, Leah. And it also could, Reuben's also been used before by his mother with the whole Mandrake and Rachel way back when.
Right.
To kind of help his mom get some leverage. So, okay, I've done it once. I'll do it again.
Right.
I'll get involved in your personal life, Mom and Dad.
Because probably everybody in camp knows about this
and
anyways.
your bedroom life.
Right.
But also, he is the firstborn.
Right.
So he could be looking, going, well, the rights of the firstborn are one day. All of this is mine. So maybe he wanted Bilhah. Maybe there was an attraction there. Maybe he was laying claim to, it's mine anyways. So I'm just going to take a little bit of it now. Because I did tell you, and this is where when we did last week's, the word used is the same one Leah and Rachel used. It's not, the idea of having sex here is not about a loving marriage.
Oh.
It's the same Hebrew word used for Dinah's rape, for Sodom and Gomorrah and the angels, for Potiphar's wife wanting Jacob or Joseph.
So in many ways, it's cast as a negative.
Yes. It's
thing.
not like Bilhah and Reuben had some secret romance going on the side.
Right.
There was not a lot of love and intimacy in this taking of Bilhah.
Which then would make sense. It would make it go back to what you originally said. Like, he's doing this for his mom.
Right.
I want to make sure you don't usurp my mother's position.
Yep.
Interesting. But it also gets him removed.
Yes. So now we can cross off a third boy.
Right.
And so it's fascinating. So we just wiped out the oldest, the second, and the third.
Reuben, Simeon, Levi.
Yes. So
Judah's
that
next.
leaves Judah, which, okay, he's next in line. And then you have Rachel,
And you
two
have
boys, Joseph and Benjamin. Well, it's obvious it goes to the older brother. So it's going to be Joseph over Benjamin. So really, is it Judah? Because he's even older than
We've got Issachar, Zebulun, the last
so
two
he's
sons.
older than those two. So it should naturally come to him next. So it's going to be this play as we read the story. Is it Judah? Is it Joseph?
It's interesting because on his deathbed, Jacob gives Joseph his firstborn blessing.
Yes, he
not
does.
to Reuben.
Mm-hmm.
And Reuben, after this, kind of becomes
Less.
like you see his part in the story very much relegated, like downplayed, demeaned. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, so we've been able to cross off
3,
but we still do need to go back to the beginning of chapter 35 and just watch Jacob, because we're getting him back to the land. He's never completely come back to the land.
Right.
He met Esau last week in our podcast, but now we need to get back to completely into the land of promise. And so as he does that, it's fascinating, where chapter 34 is all about sexual impurity. Chapter 35 opens with his purification. And this is where we did talk about maybe those household gods Rachel took from her dad and was sitting on.
Oh, right.
Maybe this is the time where Jacob's
Right.
like, okay, we're done.
Right.
Let's just clear up. We're going into this.
Right.
And he's seen God being faithful to his covenant. And so we have God is going to bless Jacob. But let's quickly look at Isaac's words. Isaac had told Jacob he will receive a blessing like Abraham did. And Jacob, if you follow, actually follows the same route back that Abraham did originally. First, Abraham stopped at Shechem in chapter 12, verse 6. We just saw Jacob there.
Right.
Then Abraham builds an altar, chapter 12, verse 7. Chapter 33, verse 20, Jacob builds an altar. Abraham moves on to Bethel and builds an altar, chapter 12, verse 8. Jacob moves to Bethel, chapter 35, verse 6, and builds an altar in verse 7. So we see Jacob going through the same route, the same motions that we saw Abraham did. And then we see God showing up to Jacob now. And in a way, using the same words, the same promises of the covenant that he gave to Abraham. So we've watched. The covenant is a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
God's coming now and saying, hey, I made it with Abraham, made it with your father Isaac. Now I'm making it with you.
Right.
And there's nothing Jacob can do to lose the covenant and all these blessings, but it's God coming, watch what I'm going to do with your family. Watch what I'm going to do. I mean, he's already been doing it.
Right. He's been blessing him and faithful to him.
Right. So Jacob, see what I've done? Here's what I'm going to continue to do. And then in verse 13, God went up from Jacob, just like in chapter 17, verse 22, God went up from Abraham.
Oh, interesting.
And so now it's time, as we go into these next couple podcasts, we're going to watch. That covenant now is going to go over all the tribes, all those brothers. They all are going to carry God's covenant.
Mm-hmm. And
so we're going to watch as that plays out. This family's going to expand because that sets us up then for Exodus.
Right.
And Moses. That's, again, one of our guns on the wall.
Right.
But the issue we have now is, okay, they all carry the covenant. Who gets the seed?
Right. Right.
And so, but before we do that, we have a few loose ends we need to tie up.
Right.
Isaac needs to die.
Did you talk Rachel dies too? Did
Yeah,
you mention that?
Yes, because that's why Bilhah got brought up.
Oh, right. Yep. Sorry.
So we lose Rachel, and then we're kind of done. Isaac's done from the storyline. He's not the main focus.
Right.
So at 180, the chapter 35 ends with Isaac dying.
And Jacob and Esau bury him.
Yes, so they come back for that.
They come back together for that.
But
yeah.
what's fascinating, and I'll get into this again next week, Isaac's actually still alive when Joseph disappears and goes off to Egypt.
Right.
And next week, I'll break it all. Come back next week. I'll break it all down the time-wise, how we can know that for sure.
Right.
But in this storyline, we just want to get Isaac out of the way.
Right.
And so Isaac dies, old, ripe. I forget how it's worded. Ripe old
180.
age.
Yeah.
Okay. And we said before, Abraham dies at a ripe old age.
Right.
Jacob doesn't get that.
No.
Jacob's whole life is filled with a lot of turmoil and deceit. Potentially, probably at his own.
The rabbis have an interesting story about it, but I'll wait.
We have time.
Oh. Well, because it's in Egypt. There's the reason why.
Oh, then we'll have to save that for
Yeah,
later.
we'll save that for Egypt.
Okay.
Come back for Egypt.
But so we're wrapping up Isaac. Isaac's dying. And then, oh yeah, because we did just point out Esau came back for burying Isaac.
Right.
Let's wrap up Esau. So that's all of chapter 36. Esau is going to go off. He's going to have these descendants. You can watch the wealth as he moves. What happens? Verse 6 actually says he moved away from his brother Jacob. And so we're just kind of wrapping up Esau, and he's going to now too disappear from our storyline.
Right.
And so that means next week now we can fully focus on, in these next couple chapters, who gets the seed. Is it Judah, the next in line of Israel, of Leah's children, or is it Joseph, the favorite wife's child?
Right.
And so that's where, now that's going to come back into play. And that helps us then with chapter 38.
Right.
Why is that random, disgusting chapter included? So over the next couple of weeks, as you're looking at Genesis, as you're reading that, keep that in mind. That's why some of these chapters are included, because we've got to keep crossing off names.
Right.
So that's the Context and Color of the Bible podcast for today.
You know what I appreciated, Veronica, is that you pointed out that not everything in the Bible goes in chronological order.
Yes.
They're very intentional. Moses was very intentional where he put things, and he is wrapping up Isaac with a nice bow. You're done, even though Isaac's still alive through the beginning of this story. But we want to wrap up Isaac first. So it's just a good reminder.
Yep.
They're intentional. God does not waste ink.
Yes.
And so when there's a story in there, it's in there for a reason. It's our job to partner with the Holy Spirit and figure out why it's in there. Dig, look, ask, wrestle with it. What is this adding to the story in the text? Why is it even put here when it could easily have actually been put somewhere else? This isn't just a history book.
Right.
You know, this is the story of what God is doing in the world, and it's using historical things. This is real people, real events, but it's put in a specific structure.
Right.
To teach us something about God in the world.
To focus us.
Yes.
On what we're supposed to be looking at.
Yeah. So thank you for that reminder.
Yeah. So, and if you want to see how that all works out, come back next week and I will have a graphic.
But you won't show us on
I
the
won't
podcast.
show us on the podcast, but you can always find it on our social media because it does help to see and go, okay, because truthfully, hearing it spoken,
Right.
it gets a little confusing.
Right.
So I'll put in that plug for our social media, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. Erica has a website. I have a website. And those are just different ways you can interact, see some behind the scenes things, see
Right.
how I picture all this in my head.
Right.
So
Always fascinating.
I know. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.